Something is happening in millions of bedrooms across the world that nobody wants to acknowledge. Couples who once couldn't keep their hands off each other now sleep on opposite sides of the bed like roommates. Men who were once desired are now tolerated. Women who used to look at their partners with hunger now look through them with indifference. The relationship hasn't ended. The attraction has. And the silence around this epidemic is deafening, because admitting it requires facing a truth that modern relationship advice refuses to speak. Desire doesn't grow from equality, it grows from difference. You're not imagining the shift. That woman who used to light up when you walked in the room now barely looks up from her phone. The intimacy that used to be spontaneous now requires negotiation, planning, the perfect conditions that never quite align. She says she loves you, and maybe she does. But love without desire is friendship wearing a wedding ring. And somewhere deep in your gut, you know exactly when it changed. It was the moment you stopped leading and started asking permission for everything. The moment you became her emotional support dog instead of her man. The modern relationship model sold you a lie. It told you that vulnerability creates intimacy, that sharing every feeling builds connection, that being her best friend is the foundation of lasting love. What they didn't tell you is that friendship kills attraction. That constant emotional availability makes you invisible. That when you become her therapist, her girlfriend in a man's body, her safe space for every anxiety and insecurity, you stop being the man she wants to sleep with. You become the man she sleeps next to while fantasizing about someone else. Here's what actually happens in the death of desire. It doesn't explode in a dramatic fight or betrayal. It erodes slowly, like water wearing down stone. Each time you seek her approval before making a decision, a little bit of attraction dies. Each time you explain yourself when she questions your choices, another piece falls away. Each time you change your plans because she's in a mood, the gap between who you were and who you've become widens. And one day, you wake up next to a woman who respects you less than she respects the barista who made her coffee that morning. Not because you're a bad man, because you stopped being a man entirely. The first step in restoring what's been lost isn't grand gestures or romantic weekends away. It's internal reconstruction. You have to rebuild the masculine axis that's collapsed under years of seeking her emotional validation. This means making decisions without checking in first. Small ones initially. Where you're eating dinner, how you're spending Saturday, what time you're leaving for the party. Not because you're trying to control her, but because a man who constantly needs permission isn't leading anything. He's following. And nothing kills a woman's desire faster than realizing she's dating a follower. I watched this happen to someone who came asking why his wife of 8 years had stopped being intimate with him. They hadn't had sex in 14 months. He'd tried everything the relationship book suggested. More date nights, helping more around the house, being more emotionally available, having the big talks about their connection. Nothing worked. Then he mentioned something seemingly unrelated. She made all the decisions in their life. Where they lived, what they ate, how they decorated, where they vacationed, what they did on weekends. He called it being considerate of her preferences. What it actually was complete abdication of masculine responsibility. He'd handed her the steering wheel to their entire life, then wondered why she'd lost attraction to a passenger. Women don't consciously decide to lose attraction. It's biological, operating beneath the level of rational thought. Her body responds to energy patterns, to behavioral cues that signal genetic fitness. When you constantly seek her input on everything, when you adjust your behavior based on her moods, when you defer to her judgment reflexively, you're signaling uncertainty, weakness, lack of conviction. These signals shut down her arousal circuitry as efficiently as flipping a light switch. It's not personal, it's genetic programming responding to survival indicators that haven't changed since our ancestors lived in caves. The second element of restoration requires something most men find counterintuitive: creating space and emotional mystery. For years, you've probably been doing the opposite, sharing every thought, every feeling, every insecurity. You think this transparency builds trust. What it actually builds is familiarity, and familiarity doesn't create desire. It creates comfort, which is fine for business partners and friends, but fatal for lovers. Desire lives in the space between certainty and uncertainty, between knowing someone and still having more to discover. When you've laid out your entire psychological landscape, when there are no surprises left, when she can predict your every response, you've killed the tension that attraction requires. This doesn't mean becoming cold or withholding. It means understanding that not every emotional fluctuation needs to be shared. That processing some things internally makes you stronger, not weaker. That maintaining a degree of mystery about your inner world keeps her curious rather than complacent. Men who constantly process their feelings out loud with their partners aren't being authentic. They're being needy. There's a profound difference. Watch what happens when you stop explaining yourself constantly. When she asks where you've been and you say, handling some things, instead of giving a detailed accounting of your afternoon. When you make a decision and simply state it, rather than justifying every aspect. When you have internal experiences you don't immediately report, something shifts in her behavior. She starts paying more attention, asking more questions, showing more interest in your day, not because you're hiding anything, but because you've reintroduced an element that had vanished. The sense that you exist independently of her, that you have a complete inner life she doesn't fully access or control. A third restoration point centers on physical polarity. Most dead bedroom situations didn't start in the bedroom. They started when masculine initiation disappeared from daily life. When you stopped guiding her with a hand on the small of her back. When you stopped pulling her close without asking first. When every touch became tentative, seeking permission, afraid of rejection. This hesitancy communicates uncertainty. An uncertain touch generates no arousal response. 0. Reactivating physical polarity means reclaiming the role of initiator without apology. Not aggressive, not presumptuous, but decisive. When you want to kiss her, you kiss her. When you want to hold her, you pull her close. When you want her, you show it through action rather than asking if she's in the mood. This isn't about ignoring boundaries. It's about understanding that desire responds to masculine decisiveness, not to diplomatic negotiation. The man who constantly asks permission is the same man she'll constantly find excuses to avoid, because his uncertainty has already answered the question. He's not sure he deserves her desire. And if he's not sure, why would she be? There was this case of a couple, married 12 years, where intimacy had declined to maybe twice a year. Always initiated by her, always on her terms, always feeling like charity rather than desire. The man had developed this pattern of asking if she wanted to be intimate, then accepting whatever excuse she gave. He thought he was being respectful. What he was actually being was passive. One day, after understanding this dynamic, he simply changed his behavior, stopped asking, stopped negotiating, started touching her with intention throughout the day. Not sexual necessarily, but with masculine confidence, guiding her through doorways, pulling her into him while cooking dinner, kissing her because he wanted to, not because he was asking permission. Within 2 weeks, she initiated intimacy more than she had in the previous 2 years. Not because he'd discovered some secret technique, because he'd reactivated the polarity that makes desire possible. The fourth restoration element involves conditioning through attention. You've probably spent years rewarding bad behavior and punishing good behavior without realizing it. Every time she criticizes you and you apologize immediately, you've rewarded criticism. Every time she creates drama and you drop everything to manage her emotions, you've rewarded drama. Every time she becomes controlling and you comply, you've rewarded control. Meanwhile, the rare moments when she's pleasant, cooperative, feminine, you probably don't even notice because you're too busy trying to avoid the next conflict. This pattern has to reverse. Feminine energy, cooperation, respect, these need to be met with presence, attention, affection. Controlling behavior, excessive criticism, disrespect, these need to be met with emotional withdrawal. Not punishment, not revenge, just natural consequences. When she treats you well, you move toward her. When she treats you poorly, you move away. This isn't manipulation. It's basic human interaction that's been functioning since people first formed relationships. But modern men have been taught that maintaining this boundary is toxic, that walking away from bad behavior is abandonment. So they stay and absorb abuse, then wonder why their partners lose respect for them. The contrast in how this works is striking. She raises her voice at you over something trivial. The conditioned response is to apologize, try to calm her down, manage her emotional state. The correct response is to calmly state that you'll continue the conversation when she can speak respectfully. Then leave the room. Not angrily, not with drama. Just a simple boundary enforced through action. The first time you do this, she might escalate. The second time, she'll test whether you're serious. By the third time, the behavior starts changing because she's learned that treating you poorly doesn't get her what she wants. It gets her less of you. His boundaries are controlling. Her boundaries are standards. His expectations are demands. Her expectations are needs. His wants are selfish. Her wants are requirements. This double standard has programmed men to believe that having any expectations in a relationship is wrong. But here's the reality. A relationship without masculine standards isn't a relationship. It's a hostage situation. And the hostage never becomes desirable. The fifth element of restoring attraction involves reclaiming leadership in experience and direction. Most dying relationships have fallen into complete stagnation. The same routine, the same conversations, the same activities on repeat until life becomes an endless loop of predictable mediocrity. And then both people wonder where the passion went. The passion left when the aliveness left. When nothing new ever happens. When there's no movement, no growth, no sense of being part of something dynamic. The relationship fossilizes. It doesn't matter how compatible you are or how much you love each other. Stagnation kills desire more efficiently than almost anything else. Taking leadership doesn't mean making unilateral decisions about everything. It means creating momentum, planning something unexpected, buying tickets to something she's mentioned once months ago, announcing that you're leaving Friday for the weekend without giving her time to overthink and create obstacles. Taking her hand and leading her somewhere without explaining where you're going. These actions communicate that you're living life actively, rather than waiting for life to happen to you. And active, directed energy is what she needs to feel in order to surrender into her feminine. Women don't want to lead. They want to be led by someone worth following. When you abdicate that role, she has to fill the vacuum, and resenting you for it. There was a couple where the man had stopped planning anything years ago. Every vacation, every date, every social plan came from her. She'd complain that he never took initiative, but then whenever he suggested something, she'd find reasons it wouldn't work or ways to modify his plan until it became hers. He eventually just stopped trying. The relationship became her managing his participation in a life she was planning alone. One day, he just booked a trip, told her when they were leaving, what to pack, handled every detail. She fought him on it initially, questioned his choices, suggested changes. He held firm. They went, and for the first time in years, she relaxed into being along for the ride, rather than directing every moment. Something shifted between them that weekend. Not because the destination was special, because the dynamic was different. Every relationship has an emotional temperature. When both people are managing each other's feelings constantly, negotiating every decision, apologizing for normal boundaries, the temperature drops to room level. Comfortable maybe, but dead. No heat, no fire, no passion. Desire requires temperature differential. It requires the friction of difference, the tension between masculine and feminine, the dynamic of pursuit and surrender. When everything becomes egalitarian, when every decision is joint, when all polarity disappears in the name of fairness, you don't get equality in desire. You get mutual extinction of desire. This is why the modern relationship advice of treating your partner like your best friend destroys so many relationships. Your best friend isn't supposed to desire you sexually. That would be weird. So when you successfully turn your partner into your best friend through constant emotional sharing, democratic decision-making, and complete transparency, you've accomplished exactly what you set out to do. You've created a friendship. Desire died because you killed the polarity that sustained it. The wider cultural consequence of polarization loss isn't just sexless marriages. It's the death of romance itself. When masculine energy becomes indistinguishable from feminine energy, when men are taught to process emotions like women, and women are taught to compete like men, the magnetic force that draws people together disappears. You can't have attraction between two identical poles. The whole system requires difference. And we're watching in real time what happens when that difference is systematically destroyed. People who technically love each other but feel absolutely nothing when they touch. Your caution about addressing this directly isn't weakness. You know instinctively that your relationship sits on a knife's edge. One wrong move, and the explosion could end everything. So you've learned to tiptoe, to manage, to avoid, to accommodate. And every day of accommodation, you die a little more. Every night of sleeping next to someone who feels miles away, the gap widens. Every week that passes without genuine desire, the possibility of restoration feels more remote. But here's what you need to understand. The relationship is already over in its current form. You're not risking destruction by changing. You're choosing between slow death and possible resurrection. The restoration of polarity isn't about going back to some outdated model of relationships. It's about recognizing that certain dynamics are timeless because they're biological. Women are attracted to masculine direction the same way men are attracted to feminine receptivity. This hasn't changed because culture declared it should. Your grandmother understood this instinctively. Your great-grandmother lived it naturally, but your generation was taught that these patterns were oppressive rather than complementary, that equality meant sameness rather than balanced difference. Now you're living with the consequences, a relationship that looks perfect on paper but feels dead in practice, a partner who loves you but doesn't want you, a life together that's stable, secure, and completely devoid of passion. And everyone around you pretends this is normal, that this is what long-term relationships become. But you know better. You've seen the rare couples who maintain desire after decades. It's not luck, it's polarity. What you need to understand is that she's not consciously choosing to feel this way. Her body is responding to energy patterns you're creating. When you operate from masculine direction, calm confidence, unshakable presence, her body softens, her guard drops, her desire awakens. But when you operate from seeking approval, managing her emotions, explaining yourself constantly, her body tenses, her respect fades, her attraction extinguishes. It's not personal. It's physiological response to energy dynamics. The path forward requires accepting hard truths. That vulnerability without strength is just weakness. That emotional availability without boundaries is just neediness. That being her everything means you've become her nothing. That love without polarity becomes friendship with paperwork. These aren't pleasant revelations, but they're accurate ones. And accuracy is what you need right now, not comfort. You have two choices. Continue the slow decline into complete roommate status, where you coexist peacefully until one of you can't take the emptiness anymore and leaves, or rebuild the masculine foundation that attraction requires, knowing that the process might temporarily make things worse before they get better. Most men choose the first option. It's safer, more comfortable, less risky. Those relationships die slowly, quietly, without drama, just gradually increasing distance, until one day you realize you're strangers sharing a lease. But some men choose reconstruction. They reclaim their masculine axis. They create space and mystery. They lead physically without apology. They condition through attention rather than accommodation. They create direction and momentum in life. These men face initial resistance, testing, sometimes anger at the change in dynamic. But underneath that resistance, something else awakens. Respect returns, interest rekindles, and in some cases, desire resurrects from what everyone thought was a permanent grave. Your peace matters. Your passion matters. Your desire to be desired matters. Years of sacrifice don't obligate you to permanent passionlessness. Love without desire isn't noble. It's tragedy dressed as commitment. And staying in it doesn't make you good. It makes you a volunteer prisoner serving a sentence nobody handed you. The question isn't whether you can restore what's been lost. The question is whether you're willing to become the man that restoration requires. Whether you're ready to stop seeking permission and start taking responsibility. Whether you can handle her testing the change. Whether you're committed to maintaining polarity even when it's uncomfortable. Because comfortable killed your desire. Reconstruction won't be comfortable either, but at least it leads somewhere other than slow extinction. I want to hear from you. Have you felt a polarity die in your relationship? Do you recognize the moment when desire shifted to tolerance? What happened when you tried to address it? Share your experience in the comments. Let other men know they're not alone in facing this. Because the silence around dying desire in long-term relationships is deafening, and breaking that silence is the first step toward understanding that you're not broken. The dynamic is broken, and unlike who you are, dynamics can change.